It's easy to see the appeal of a van-based mid-sized MPV. You get a lot more space than a more car-like people carrier of similar size, and for quite a lot less money. You can also see, though, why customers steer away from utilitarian models of this sort. After all, who wants to look like a delivery driver? So, what if you could have a 5 or 7 seat vehicle of this kind with more car-like looks and LCV-based versatility? That's what Peugeot's Rifter sets out to provide.
So, would you buy a van-based MPV? Once, not very long ago, the idea of strapping your offspring into the back of something designed for parcels and plumbing equipment seemed a little odd. But, as with so many things, time has brought much greater acceptance of the idea. It helps, of course, that the product has become much more car-like. Take, as an example, Peugeot's offering in this segment, the Rifter. This is that French maker's version of Citroën's hugely successful Berlingo mid-sized people carrier. So even if you haven't heard the name before, you can rest assured that you're buying into a well-established product. This Rifter also shares its engineering with Vauxhall's offering in this sector, the Combo Life. It isn't just the names that betray the LCV origins of those two rivals. Visually, this Peugeot is easily the most car-like of the trio, and there's a reason for that. If you're a Citroën or a Vauxhall MPV buyer, but don't want a mid-sized contender that looks like a van, those brands can steer you towards the more car-like, people-carrying models they offer. Peugeot, though, can no longer provide such a thing, now that it's repositioned its 5008 model as an SUV. So this Rifter must be all things to all people in the mid-sized, people-carrying segment. For the designers of this car, that was a big ask, but as you can see, they've had a decent crack at it. Thanks to SUV styling cues and the smart, sharky front end, you won't be immediately pigeonholed as a delivery driver when you drop the kids off at school. Nor does the interior feel particularly utilitarian. And there's just as much camera-driven safety tech and media connectivity as you'd get in any modern family hatch. Certainly more than you'd find in other significant van-based mid-sized MPV models in this sector, like the Ford Tourneo Connect and the Volkswagen Caddy Life. As with those competitors, this Peugeot offers a choice of short and long wheelbase body shapes and 5 or 7 seat interior configurations. Plus, to distance itself from its in-house Citroën and Vauxhall PSA Group rivals, this car adopts its brand's more focused i-cockpit instrument binnacle design. It's all a decent step forward from Peugeot's previous contender in this segment, the Partner TP, launched in 2008 to replace the previous Partner Escapade, and sold until the launch of this Rifter in mid-2018. You probably won't remember those two models, but there's a fair chance that buyers in this sector might take a good bit more notice of this one. Let's find out why. It's hard not to approach a drive in a van-based MPV without preconceptions, but ideally you want to try and put them aside here. The driving position helps with that, using as it does the innovative i-cockpit layout lifted direct from more conventional, similarly sized Peugeot hatch models. This sees you grasping a tiny sports car-like steering wheel, a potential problem you might think, given that in most vehicles you view the instrument cluster through the wheel spokes. Here, though, you don't have to, for the instrument pack has been moved to sit up above the wheel rim. The end result might not suit everyone, but we like it, for it better enables you to keep an eye on the dials without taking your attention from the road. Plus, the little wheel enables wrist flick style steering turns through twisting corners and roundabouts, should you be in the mood to give your Rifter a bit of a workout. You probably won't be. There's very little about the handling dynamics of this car that encourage you to push it on in any way at all. Instead, development priority has been given to something that potential buyers will be far more interested in, given the state of our country's terrible tarmac: ride quality. Vans are usually defined by a very firm standard of ride, courtesy of the stiff suspension needed for heavy loads. On that basis, this affordable French people carrier could hardly be described as particularly van-like, for the soft, absorbent ride quality is one of the best things about the driving experience it offers. That's helped by the platform that this model uses, a mixture of PSA Group van at the back and the French conglomerate's current EMP2 car platform at the front. The suspension setup used by this Rifter could, for you, be one of the keys to its appeal. After all, we reckon that aside from safety and practicality, ride quality needs to be one of your main criteria when making a decision on an MPV-style vehicle. Too firm and you'll never manage to get the kids off to sleep on a long journey at night. Too soft and they'll quickly get car sick if you have to push on through the turns when running late. This Gallic people carrier strikes a good balance because it's a little softer than you might expect in what the engineers call compression and rebound. In other words, over the bumps, but a little firmer than you'd think in roll, in other words, round the corners. For what is quite a tall, high vehicle, there's certainly none of the tippy feeling through the turns that characterised earlier generation versions of this design, helped in no small part by beefy anti-roll bars. So this car can be relaxing to drive, even if, somewhat understandably, it can't be a rewarding steer in the way that, say, a similarly sized car-like MPV such as Ford's C-Max can be, though things would be better in this regard were it not for the rather vague steering. Still, just how important are dynamic attributes in a vehicle of this kind? Well, you be the judge, but we'd suggest that things such as refinement are of greater importance. How does that compare against an ordinary car-like MPV, like, say, that C-Max, or perhaps a similarly sized Renault Scenic or Citroën C4 Space Tourer? Again, not too badly, we suggest. The boxy interior size of a Rifter is greater, of course, so you will get a little more noise reverberating off the walls, but engine noise, tyre rumble and wind roar have all been reduced to manageable levels. Which is just as well, for these small differences actually have a big effect on how fresh you feel at the end of a journey. You'll be wanting to know about engines, and if perhaps you were familiar with this car's predecessor, whether this Rifter can offer you some decent petrol-powered options this time around to suit the current zeitgeist. The old Partner TP model struggled in that regard, but this car doesn't, being fitted out with the PSA Group's excellent 3-cylinder 1.2-litre PureTech turbo unit. Most buyers will opt for this power plant in 110 HP form, where it's mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox and makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 11.7 seconds, en route to a maximum of 109. The other petrol alternative is a 130 bhp version of this engine, but if you go for that, you have to have it with the brand's latest E88 8-speed auto gearbox. This is a proper torque converter auto this time round. The old E86 auto option you got in some versions of the previous Partner TP was merely a robotised manual. Shifts are now far smoother as a result. There are even steering wheel paddle shifters, although we doubt you'll feel like one of Peugeot's rally drivers at any point. The French brand still expects, though, that the majority of Rifter buyers will want a diesel and offers its usual choice of 3 1.5-litre Blue HDI units, developing either 75, 100 or, as in this case, 130 HP. The base Blue HDI 75 variant is a distinctly leisurely thing, taking a yawning 17 seconds to reach 62 miles an hour from rest on the way to just 95 miles an hour. Which helps to explain why almost all customers opt for one of the two perkier Rifter diesel models, possibly the 100 HP version, which makes 62 miles an hour in 12.5 seconds en route to 109 miles an hour. At the top of the range, the punchy 130 HP engine we're trying here is the only diesel unit mated to a manual gearbox with 6 speeds rather than 5, and is the power plant to choose if you plan on doing any towing, or you just like a car that makes mincemeat of typical overtaking manoeuvres on the motorway. The 300 Nm torque output offers a plump wave of pulling power that allows the manual version of this variant to tug along up to 1.5 tons, and it really surges nicely through the gears, getting to 62 miles an hour in 10.4 seconds on the way to a still rather modest top speed of 116 miles an hour. Still, this vehicle does have quite a bit of frontal area to present to the airstream. We should additionally mention that Blue HDI 130 buyers also get the alternative of that E88 auto gearbox, which might be a good option for parents who want one less thing to worry about as they ferry a noisy family around. Other things to note? Well, the manual gearbox doesn't like to be hurried with a rather long throw between ratios, but then this isn't any kind of sports car. More importantly, all-round visibility is very good, with particular credit going to the enormous mirrors. Along with a relatively tight 10.9 metre turning circle and the vast glass area, it all makes town driving much easier than you might expect. As for the who go anywhere, do anything lifestyle vibe that this car is marketed with, well, it's as well not to get too carried away by that or the SUV styling cues. European markets do get a proper rough, tough four-wheel drive version of this model that doubles as a camper, but for right-hand drive rifters, the only concession that Peugeot offers for wild weather or even wilder terrain is to make available its optional advanced grip control system. This is designed to help you with tarmac traction in icy winter conditions, or maybe perhaps in muddy car parks. It works with the standard ESP stability control program to brake a wildly spinning front wheel and transfer torque to the tyre with most traction. Control of the setup is via a rotary knob near the gear stick, which offers dedicated modes to deal with either snow, mud or sand, or indeed to turn all the electronics off completely, as you might want to do, for example, when braking on gravel or slush, when locked up wheels can actually build up a little buffer in front of them to help you to stop. This is all enough to enable negotiation of some surprisingly sticky situations. The stickiest situation a typical Rifter buyer will come across, though, is likely to be an awkwardly shaped parking space, though even that'll be easy to negotiate if you fitted your car out with options like the 180-degree colour reversing camera or the Park Assist pack. It's all part of a sensible, practical remit that this Peugeot tries to deliver with a little more flair than its rivals. Peugeot says that this Rifter is intended to bring dynamism to the van-based mid-sized MPV segment, which may be overstating things a bit, but at first glance it's certainly a little more visually interesting than practical products of this kind tend to be. At least from the front anyway, where the rather apologetic visage of the previous partner TP model has been replaced by something altogether more assertive. This distinctive Peugeot family nose borrows from the Sharky look, pioneered by the second-generation 508. Plusher models feature halogen headlamps incorporating these distinctive angled LED daytime running light strips, and this 3D stamped effect black radiator grille. There's no option for full LED headlights, but all variants get these front fog lights that feature a useful cornering function. And if you avoid entry-level trim, you get this silvered lower scuff plate too. From the side, you pick up the designer's intention to give this model something of an SUV vibe, delivered courtesy of heavily emphasised and strangely indented wheel arches, substantial swathes of black plastic lower cladding and standard roof rails. It all creates a chunky Tonka toy type vibe, suggesting that this Rifter might be up for the odd adventure. The impact of all this will be more evident if you can afford to move beyond this mid-range Allure trim level and progress up to top GT line spec, at which point the wheel rims are upgraded in size from 16 to 17 inches and the roof bars can gain a gloss black finish. This time round in this segment, Peugeot is offering buyers not only this 4.4 metre standard body shape, but also an alternative 4.75 metre long body style, which is intended to deliver a lot more space for those wanting to get their Rifter fitted out with a third seating row. At the back, it's pretty van-like, though Peugeot has tried to dilute that feeling by adding in smart claw effect LED rear tail lamps and a rather unconvincing silvered lower skid plate strip. They've also specified this model with a one-piece tailgate rather than the asymmetrically opening twin rear doors you'd get on the commercial van version of this design. To be frank, twin doors would be much easier to use. This massive tailgate not only takes a bit of strength to lift, but it also needs quite a lot of space to complete its raising motion, with the result that in, say, a tight multi-storey car park, you might not be able to access it at all. Aware of that, Peugeot offers a useful opening rear glass section, but unfortunately only fits this element of design to the most expensive GT line variants in the model lineup, which is why we don't have it here. This feature really should be standard, or at the very least optional, across the range. To be fair, we should point out that when you do get the full tailgate open, there is a benefit to it being so big, namely that it provides quite an effective canopy under which you can corral your kids if, say, you're dropping them off at school in the rain and they're getting all their bits and pieces together from the boot. Peugeot also says that it's one of the things that makes owners go off and do things like tailgate picnics. But we're getting off the point and ignoring one of the key things here, namely the enormous amount of luggage room on offer. Let's take a closer look at boot space. Now, whatever way you specify this Rifter, its cargo area will be vast. Just how vast that area is, we'll tell you now, so notebooks at the ready. In this standard length 5-seat model with both seating rows in place, there's 1,000 millimetres of loading area length and, with the rear parcel shelf in its top position, a total of 775 litres of capacity is available. A figure that rises to 1,355 litres if you load to the roof. For the long wheelbase model, with its third row seating taking up most of the space in this boot area, there's nonetheless still potentially up to 566 millimetres of load area length, depending on seat positioning, enough for a decent-sized supermarket shop. In such a long wheelbase model with that third row of seating removed, there's a huge 1,350 millimetres of load area length, so you could probably get all the kids' bikes in. And the capacity figures would be 1,050 litres up to window level and 1,900 litres up to the roof. This boot area is square and very usable, and if it really isn't big enough and you've a car full of passengers, it's also worth knowing that you can take up to 100 kilograms strapped to the roof. Getting bulky stuff in is aided by this low loading lip and useful touches like elasticated straps here on the left and a storage compartment here on the right. A nice touch is the way that the parcel shelf, just mentioned, can be positioned at 2 heights and can take a reasonable amount of weight. Enough so as you could put the family dog on top of it with your shopping safe below. There's no underfloor storage space and, a little disappointingly given this model's intended lifestyle vibe, no option to have a 12-volt socket in this boot area either. But 4 stout tie-down points are of course provided. Where van-based mid-sized MPVs like this totally come into their own from a luggage-carrying perspective, though, is when you're able to dispense with a second seating row and use a model of this sort a bit like a removal van. Folding down the back seat in more affordable Rifter variants is via the usual 60-40 split rear backrest arrangement you'll be used to. In a top-spec GT line derivative, though, you'll get 3 individual rear seats that can be retracted by a neat magic flat release catch in the boot. However you flatten the second row seating, in a standard length model, there'll be 1,880 millimetres of loading length freed up once you've done it, or as much as 2,700 millimetres if you've avoided entry-level trim and got yourself a Rifter variant offering the option of being able to fold forward the front passenger seat. For the long body style, the respective figures would be 2,230 millimetres and 3,050 millimetres, the latter figure long enough to enable the interior of this car to swallow something like a kayak. For completion, we'll also give you the luggage capacity figures across the Rifter range, with both front seats fully in place but all others in the cabin folded. In that configuration, this standard shape model could offer you 1,414 litres of room up to window level, or 3,000 litres if you were to load to the ceiling. For the long wheelbase model with that same layout, the figures would be 1,672 litres and 3,500 litres. In both cases, there'd be 500 litres more capacity freed up if you were to fold forward the front passenger seat. But even without doing that, there's substantially more space on offer here than you get from a more conventional car-based MPV from the next class up. To give you some perspective on that, we'll tell you that, say, a Ford Galaxy with second and third row seating folded would give you up to 2,339 litres of space. Time to take a seat at the wheel, where quite a few changes have been made over previous models that Peugeot's offered in this segment. And one area of distinct improvement lies in the area of infotainment, courtesy of this large 8-inch capacitive centre dash screen, which comes fitted above entry-level trim. We'll get to that in a moment. Slightly more intriguing, though, is the other key enhancement, this one applicable to all models, the brand's much talked about so-called iCockpit design, which uses this much smaller little two-spoke wheel. You view the dials over the top of its rim rather than conventionally through its spokes. It's a design approach which works rather better in this Rifter than it does in some of Peugeot's more usual car models, thanks to this MPV's upright driving position and tall fascia. Yes, it's a bit of a culture shock. Yes, you'll eventually get to like it. Yes, you should ignore whinging journalists who don't. If your perception of van-based MPV motoring is of something quite utilitarian, then you might be rather pleasantly surprised by the cabin quality that's served up here. You get a few soft-touch plastics and little touches of chrome this time round, though the overall ambience is still, perhaps appropriately, one of wipe-clean practicality. That screen we mentioned lifts things a bit, though, a monitor that's fitted as standard to all but the very cheapest entry-level models. It offers easy access to DAB radio stations, hands-free phone connectivity, and media streaming via Bluetooth or a USB connection. Plus, there's smartphone mirroring via the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay systems. Opt for top-spec GT line trim or pay your dealer a little more in a mid-range Allure variant like this one, and you can add connected 3D navigation. Plus, this screen can create, in this car, a Wi-Fi hotspot and provide you with an internet browser. There's also the option of a Peugeot Connect apps package, which will open up access to a whole range of informational features. With these in place, your Rifter will be able to do things like warn you of traffic jams, locate a fuel station, find you a car park and locate you a restaurant. There are also apps that will allow you to check the weather, search for tourist locations, find entertainment venues and even search for a trader via a Yellow Pages function. What we're glad this screen can't do is operate the ventilation controls. You have to have that functionality on Peugeot's similarly sized 308 and 3008 models, which is irritating when you're trying to, say, follow a sat-nav map or switch radio stations, and at the same time want to adjust the cabin climate. Here, the ventilation buttons thankfully remain separate, located further down on the centre stack. We've saved arguably the best bit, though, until last: cabin practicality. If you were to add up the capacity of all the 28 different nooks and crannies available within the interior of this Rifter, you'd arrive at a figure of 192 litres, about as much as you get in the entire boot of a city car. It's only fair to point out, though, that not all the stowage areas are offered on all models. Base-trimmed variants do without this useful overhead shelf, this tray beneath the driver's chair, and this vast console between the seats, which incorporates a 12-volt socket and is accessed via these smart twin sliding ratcheting tops. That last stowage box is really useful to have, though it would be even better if this area, or failing that the glove box, could be cooled for storage of things like cans of drink and chocolate. Unfortunately, that kind of functionality isn't available, even as an option. We're also a little surprised that the twin door bins you get in each door have no bottle mouldings. We'd point out that this slippery, shallow, narrow mid-level tray below the glove box lid is pretty much useless, and we're disappointed by the way that the open storage area, which lies below, is reduced in size on right-hand drive models by the need to accommodate a bulky fuse box. What else? Well, there ought to be an overhead storage area for your sunglasses, but on the plus side there's a useful cubby in front of the gear stick that can accommodate an optional wireless charging mat, and smaller items can be stashed behind the centre dash infotainment screen. There's a little coin holder above the electric parking brake that most models now have, and there are little ticket clips on the sun visors. The glove box is of a reasonable size and incorporates USB and aux in points, and there's a further USB point built into the frame of the infotainment screen. Cup holders, well, this model's LCV roots are further betrayed by the way that these are mounted at either end of the top of the dash. And on that subject, we're really not sure what this little circular indentation near the gear stick's for. A tiny bottle of pastilles, maybe? As for other things you might want to know, well, here's what we found in our time with this car. It's easy to find a comfortable driving position, aided by plenty of adjustment from the wheel and the height adjustable seat. As ever, all the controls are clearly marked and fall easily to hand, especially the gear lever that sprouts quite neatly into your palm from the dash. The instrument dials you view through that little steering wheel are clear and smart and come separated by an informational screen that can display a digital speedo, trip computer functions, a compass, a braking and acceleration graphic and speed limit signs. The electric window switches are, this time round, mounted properly on the doors rather than in the middle of the fascia as they were on the old partner TP. All-round visibility is fine thanks to the vast glass house, though rear parking sensors come fitted to most models just in case. Build quality seems reasonable, though some of the interior surfaces, notably on this shiny glove box lid, look as though they might scratch easily if you happen to have unruly kids. And talking of children, we'd recommend the optional Family Pack, which gives you an extra rear view mirror so that you can more easily see what your kids are getting up to behind you as you drive. Enough on what the front of the cabin's like. Let's take a seat in the second row. Now, both short and long wheelbase Rifter models offer access to this part of the car via these sliding doors. They're so much more practical than the conventionally opening items that kids so often use to dent and scratch adjoining vehicles in tightly packed car parks. The sliding doors are rather heavy to close from the inside, and this format means you can't have door pockets either. Still, on the plus side, this second row offers enough space to suit a wide variety of passenger shapes and sizes. There are vast amounts of headroom, and because the centre transmission tunnel is virtually non-existent, it's straightforward to accommodate 3 fully sized adults if need be. If you're able to stretch to top-spec GT line trim, you'll get the 3 individual rear seats that really ought to be optional further down the range. Here, though, we're stuck with the conventional fixed bench you otherwise get, which really doesn't do very much at all, unable to slide or recline in the way you'd hope an MPV model rear seat might. Another feature limited to top GT line spec, but only available on standard length models, is the Zenith panoramic glass roof that Peugeot's so proud of. This is a wide one-section panoramic glass top covered by an electric blind and featuring a central floating-style translucent arch that's edged with LED ambience lighting and incorporates various storage compartments that together have a capacity of up to 92 litres. Even without this premium feature, though, second-row passengers in a Rifter are pretty well looked after, courtesy of standard inclusions like rear vents, a useful USB port and overhead map reading lights. Get a version of this model fitted with dual-zone climate control and you get these centrally positioned fan strength buttons for this rear compartment too. Additions like aircraft-style seat-back tables with cup holder points are welcome further up the range, and all models offer storage provision that includes 2 floor compartments hidden beneath the practical rubber matting. These stowage areas designed to minimise kids' clutter or to keep valuables away from prying eyes. Talking of children, they'll appreciate the fact that, provided you avoid entry-level trim, these side windows have proper electric up and down opening, rather than the kind of fixed, edge-hinged arrangement that smaller folk tend to object to. And that's about it. Assuming you've gone for the kind of standard-length, 5-seat short-wheelbase Rifter we've been testing here. Were we to be buying this Peugeot, though, we'd be tempted to pay the small amount extra for the long body style with its 2 extra boot-mounted chairs. The fact that these sit within a spacious 4.75-metre body shape this time round makes all the difference. In the old partner TP model, the 6th and 7th seats, where fitted, were very much for kids only. Here, they can, at a pitch, be quite comfortably used by adults on short to medium-length journeys. It's just another example of this Peugeot's flexibility. Time for a bit of guidance through the Rifter model lineup, which is priced in the £20,000 to £28,000 bracket and is wider and a little more complicated than that of the previous partner TP model. This is because this time there are 2 body shapes, a 4.4 metre long standard variant with 5 seats, which is what we have here, and a 4.75 metre long version with 7 seats, available for a £1,700 premium. The availability of a really premium spec level is new too. Here it's called GT Line, and you'll need it if you want to get all the clever practicality features fitted as standard. Most customers, though, will stick to the 2 mainstream spec levels, Base Active or Allure, which is what we have here. As for engines, well, the least expensive way into this Peugeot is to opt for the lowest powered 1.5 litre blue HDI 75 diesel, but that's going to struggle a bit with a fully loaded Rifter at higher speeds or on sharper inclines. We found the alternative 3-cylinder 1.2 litre PureTech 110 petrol unit, which costs only fractionally more, to be slightly more usable. If you do prefer petrol power, you might want to know that another couple of thousand gets you that little PureTech power plant in its gutsier 130 HP state of tune, though you can only have that engine paired with Peugeot's E88 auto gearbox. In our estimation, though, you'd ideally want to bypass all three of these power plants and opt instead for either of the two perkier diesels that are pitched from only just over the £20,000 price point and will better suit a wider variety of travelling scenarios. There's a choice of either a 100 HP variant of the 1.5 litre blue HDI unit, allied with a 5-speed manual transmission, or, for just over £1,100 more, a 130 HP version of this black pump fuelled engine, which uses either a slicker 6-speed manual box, that's what we've got here, or for £1,400 more, an 8-speed E88 auto transmission. On to the value proposition all of that represents. The most obvious rivals to pitch against this Peugeot are the two that share its engineering platform and power plants, namely the Vauxhall Combo Life that costs around £700 more and the Citroën Berlingo, which costs about £800 less. Your choice between this trio will probably come down to visual preferences. Peugeot hopes that the SUV-style cues of this Rifter will give it an advantage here. Of course, there are other options in the mid-sized van-based MPV segment that you could consider. A search for sheer space and value in a vehicle of this sort might lead you towards Fiat's Doblo, which undercuts this Peugeot by around £2,000 in diesel form, but is a much more utilitarian-looking thing both inside and out. That Italian model undercuts a Rifter by even more in its petrol guise. But if you're attracted by that, you'll need to bear in mind that the only green pump fuelled engine available in that Fiat is an old-tech 1.4 litre power plant that's less powerful and considerably less efficient than anything this Peugeot can offer. Your other two options in this segment are more up-to-date. The Ford Tourneo Connect and Gran Tourneo Connect models undercut appropriate versions of this Peugeot by around £500 in their volume diesel forms, but are slightly less efficient and economical and quite a bit more van-like. The same comments apply to the other choice you could make in this segment, Volkswagen's Caddy Life. This Wolfsburg model costs about the same as this Peugeot, but bear in mind that the entry-level petrol version is a much less sprightly thing than an entry-level petrol-powered Rifter. Of course, this Peugeot's proposition looks even better if you're comparing against conventional car-like MPVs. The volume Rifter variant, the blue HDI 100 diesel, would save you over £1,500 on an equivalent Citroën C4 Space Tourer, around £2,000 on the cheapest diesel Renault Scenic, and £3,000 or more on an equivalent diesel Ford C-Max or Toyota Verso. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a Rifter that your family really needs, then you're going to need to know exactly what's included in the standard spec. So we'll move on to take a look at that. Let's start with the fact that even on a base active trimmed variant, you get a few significant essentials. Air conditioning, pretty important with all that glass. Aluminium roof bars, which make it easy to add in lifestyle options like bike carriers and roof boxes. And glazed sliding side doors to guard against car parking dents. In addition, there are welcome inclusions like auto headlights that also have a follow me home feature to guide you to your front door at night, front fog lamps that turn with the bends, magic wash auto windscreen wipers, electric heated mirrors, LED rear tail lights and remote central locking. Inside, right across the range, you'll find a height-adjustable driver's seat, a trip computer and cruise control with a speed limiter that'll help preserve your licence through roadworks or urban areas. Plus, you get practical features like a dual-height luggage cover and underfloor storage compartments for row 2 passengers. There's also a decent 6-speaker DAB audio system with steering wheel controls and Bluetooth connectivity, along with USB and 12-volt sockets. Laudably, a spare wheel standard too, as is a safety pack, including some key camera-driven features we'll cover in a moment. Unfortunately, though, an alarm costs extra. In this case, though, we've opted for mid-range Allure spec because it's the one that most Rifter buyers will probably choose. Brighter halogen headlamps with LED daytime running lights, 16-inch Taranaki alloy wheels, body-coloured bumpers and SUV-style front and rear scuff plates combine to give more of an upmarket feel. Plus, there's the extra convenience of things like a fold-flat front passenger seat, a full-width front overhead storage shelf and a storage console between the two front seats, along with front seat lumbar support. Plus, second-row occupants are better looked after at this level, with aircraft-style seat-back tables, electric windows, dedicated air vents and their own USB socket. Allure customers also get an electric parking brake and rear parking sensors, along with practical touches such as front seat armrests and driver's chair under-seat storage. Most notably of all, perhaps, at this level, you get the 8-inch capacitive centre dash touchscreen display that's key to the media connectivity this Rifter can provide. It comes with voice recognition, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone mirroring, and the option of satellite navigation. Finally, if budget permits, you're going to want to consider the top GT line trim level. This is the spec you'll need if you want some of the really clever interior features that this Rifter can provide. The 3 individual rear seats, for example, rather than the ordinary bench. These chairs can be retracted using magic flat levers in the boot. And talking of the boot, in a GT line model, you'll be able to access it more easily thanks to an opening rear tailgate glass panel. And the cabin will be an area place thanks to a standard Zenith glass roof, which incorporates overhead storage panels and a powered blind. It's a pity that these features can't be added into lesser Rifter variants as options. Outside, GT line variants are identifiable by their 17-inch Aoraki alloy wheels, rear privacy glass and power folding mirrors that, like the door handles, are finished in body colour. Inside, GT line spec gives you dual zone climate control, keyless entry and a 3D navigation system with TomTom Live traffic updates. On to options. Now, perhaps the most interesting one is the advanced grip control setup, which is available on all models and uses the ESP stability system to maximise front wheel traction in slippery conditions. We'd also want to look at a rear restraining net to keep luggage in place in the boot, possibly a tow bar, probably an alarm, and also maybe the family pack, which gives you blinds on the rear side windows and the additional rear child mirror that lets you keep a close eye on what the little horrors are getting up to in the back. Other options tend only to be available if you avoid entry-level active trim. Amongst these are things like keyless entry, front parking sensors, navigation, dual zone climate control, a smartphone charging plate and a 230-volt socket. With certain GT line spec variants, buyers can also pay extra for an adaptive cruise control system that'll automatically keep the car a safe distance behind vehicles in front on the highway. And across the range, you'll almost certainly be paying your Peugeot dealer more for your choice of paint shade, because the only standard colour is solid Bianca white. We've got metallic deep blue here. On this mid-range Allure variant, you'll also have the option of adding in larger 17-inch wheels. On to safety. Now, with its van-based mid-sized MPV model line, it's taken the French maker some time to get up to speed in this regard. Something as basic as ESP stability control, for example, was only standardised on Peugeots of this sort as recently as 2016, and base versions of the old partner TP never featured side or curtain airbags. If the Rifter was going to be seen as credibly car-like, the brand was aware that a good deal more effort was going to be needed, hence the standardisation of the company's active safety brake setup. This is one of those autonomous braking systems that, as you drive at urban speeds, scans the road ahead in search of potential accident hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. The setup also includes a distance alert system which warns the driver if he or she's getting too close to the vehicle in front. If you don't respond and a collision seems imminent, the active safety brake functionality will automatically be activated. Also standard on all Rifter models is lane keeping assist, which works on the highway to sense if you're drifting out of your lane and applies subtle steering to ease the car back to where it ought to be. And you get speed limit recognition, which alerts you if you go over the legal limit. As for other more conventional safety features, well, not before time. Every version of this mid-sized Peugeot van-based MPV gets twin side and curtain airbags, as well as twin front bags. Plus, there's ESP stability control, the usual ABS braking system with EBD electronic brake force distribution to make it more effective, and EBA or emergency brake assistance to help in panic stops that'll be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a tyre pressure monitoring, anti-whiplash front head restraints, an exterior temperature ice warning light and hill start assist to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions also make the team sheet right across the range. Specify the optional tow bar and you'll also get a trailer sway mitigation system too. If you want more, you'll need to be looking at one of the plusher trim levels. With this Allure variant, you can pay extra for the Peugeot Connect SOS and assistance system that's standard on the top GT line versions. In the event of an accident that triggers the airbags, this automatically alerts the rescue services with your exact GPS location, thanks to the use of the setup's own GPS module and SIM card. It could be a lifesaver. And this system can also be used manually via a dedicated SOS button near the rear view mirror. And beyond that, well, at the top of the range, GT line buyers also get some extra options when it comes to safety. Arguably the most important one is the Safety Plus pack, which includes 3 further camera-driven features. Traffic sign recognition pictures speed signs as you pass, displaying them on the dash. A low/high beam function automatically dips your headlights at night in the face of oncoming traffic. And a driver attention monitoring system keeps an eye on your reactions for signs of drowsiness, if necessary, prompting you to stop for a restorative coffee. As a GT Line customer, you'll also be offered the option of a Visio Park 1 pack, which provides a blind spot monitoring system that alerts you if you're about to pull out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. Plus, that pack also bundles in front parking sensors together with a 180-degree colour reversing camera. The alternative Park Assist pack gives you that Visio 1 pack together with a Park Assist system that will automatically steer you into spaces. More recent versions of previous Peugeot-branded van-based MPV models in this segment had a smattering of the company's latest engine technology, but from a petrol perspective at least, much of it tended to be fitted to variants a lot of potential buyers couldn't afford. That's no longer the case. Gone are the relatively old-tech VTI units that cheaper versions of the old Partner TP had to soldier on with. Instead, right from this starting point in the Rifter range, buyers get this French brand's class-leadingly efficient 3-cylinder 1.2-litre PureTech technology and the potential for regular green pump fuel returns of over 50 mpg. To be specific, an entry-level 1.2-litre PureTech petrol 110 HP Rifter manages 51.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 126 gram per kilometre of CO2, which might give you cause to pause for thought if you were automatically gravitating towards a diesel. If nothing but black pump fueled motoring will do, then predictably your most efficient option is to choose the base Blue HDI 75 variant, which manages 68.9 mpg on the combined cycle and 109 grams per kilometre of CO2. It's more likely though that you'll be considering the perkier Blue HDI 100 or Blue HDI 130 derivatives we'd recommend, both of which return near identical figures, 65.7 mpg and around 114 grams per kilometre. Impressively, specifying the Blue HDI 130 version with Peugeot's E88 auto transmission has no impact whatsoever on these readings. All this means that these volume diesel variants attract a relatively low 27% benefit-in-kind taxation rate for business users and an annual VED charge of £140, following a £165 figure applicable for the first year of registration. As you'd expect, All the engines on offer come with the brand's usual S&S, or stop and start system, fitted as standard. Plus there's a gear efficiency indicator to tell the driver which is the best cog to be in to use the least fuel. Keep an eye on this and drive with frugality as priority, and you should be able to eke an impressive range from a fuel tank which for some reason much larger in the petrol variants than it is in the diesels, 61 litres as opposed to 50 litres. So how have the PSA Group engineers been able to achieve such a strong efficiency showing with the engines across the range? With the PureTech petrol units, the answer lies in reduced weight and an emphasis on minimising mechanical losses due to friction. Switch your attention to Peugeot's Blue HDI diesel technology and the answer lies in a clever three-step after-treatment system designed to better eliminate the four nasty pollutants that diesel units usually put out, namely unburnt hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides and particulates. The first stage sees the unwanted hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide elements converted into harmless water and carbon dioxide. In the second stage, that nasty nitrogen oxide also gets converted into water via a selective catalytic reduction process using a urea and water mixture called AdBlue. Though you'll need to get the 17-litre tank that holds this mixture topped up every 12,500 miles. Finally, in the third step, a particulate emissions filter eliminates virtually all particulates at a stroke. Of course, you'll have to do your bit as a driver in order to get anywhere near the published fuel figures. To help you, the centre dash infotainment screen's trip computer section gives you readouts for current fuel consumption and remaining range. Plus, it will tell you how long the stop and start system has been functional for on any given trip, though we're not really sure why you'd ever want to know that. The screen between the instrument dials includes a graphic that shows the extent to which you're braking or accelerating. And if you've a Rifter variant fitted with the 8-inch centre dash infotainment screen, you'll also find buried in its menus a theoretically useful eco-coaching segment, which includes a so-called histogram section which grades your driving for acceleration, braking and smoothness and awards you star ratings out of 5 for every day of the week you're in. You can also opt to get some general advice driving tips, though personally we wouldn't, because most of the provided observations seem to be blindingly obvious. Things like try to drive smoothly and accelerate moderately. What else might you need to know? Residual values? Well, after 3 years or 60,000 miles, independent experts, CAP, reckon your Rifter will still be worth between 34.3 and 37.8% of what you originally paid for it, depending on the variant you select. A 1.2-litre petrol-powered GT line variant is expected to perform best in this regard. Expect insurance groups to be in the same ballpark as that previous model. The least you'll pay is for a Blue HDI 75 diesel derivative, which is rated at Group E. The Blue HDI 100 variant is rated at Group 11E or 12E, and this Blue HDI 130 model is rated at Group 14E or 15E. For the 1.2-litre 110 HP petrol model, you're looking at Group 10E, 11E or 12E, depending on which of the 3 spec options you choose. Maintenance costs, including spares, repairs and servicing, are likely to be low, a welcome legacy of this model's commercial ancestry. Regular service intervals come around every 20,000 miles or 12 months, depending on which comes sooner, and prepaid servicing plans are available. Finally, there's the usual 3-year or 60,000 mile warranty, including a year of Europe-wide roadside assistance. The first 2 years of that aren't subject to any mileage limits, but the 3rd year, which is taken care of by your local dealer, is limited to 60,000 miles. There's also Europe-wide breakdown assistance included from new. For the first year, you own the car. Looking at the longer term, you also have a 12-year guarantee against rust and 36 months cover for any paintwork defects, though that doesn't include stone chips and other wear and tear damage. In an ideal world, for many families, the perfect car would be one with SUV style and MPV versatility. A car like this one? Perhaps. One thing's for certain, test a Rifter and you'll be left in no doubt that commercially based people carriers have genuinely come of age. Today, vehicles of this sort are a very different proposition from the vans with windows that originally characterised this segment. If that's your perception when it comes to vehicles of this sort, then you need to change it. Or perhaps you simply need to try this Peugeot. Get a well-specified one, and features like the slick multimedia system and the ritzy glass roof will impress. Yet at the same time, it's still the sort of car you'd happily chuck a couple of muddy mountain bikes into the back of without worrying too much about the upholstery. In other words, it's the kind of family MPV you can really use. Yes, there's a price to pay for the extra sophistication that comes with this class of car these days, but even with that taken into account, an MPV of this sort will still save you plenty over the more usual car-like C-Max or scenic-style people-carrying contenders. True, models like those will drive better than a converted LCV like this and look a bit sleeker, but for many likely buyers that really won't matter. Add up the things you actually need for a school run, annual holiday, gym kit and town commuting family transport, and an MPV like this simply makes more sense than anything else, especially if you opt for the alternative, lengthier 7-seat body style. And if it can all be presented with a modicum of style in the way this Rifter has been, then so much the better. This Peugeot is certainly a much more attractive proposition than its partner TP predecessor, and not only because of the way that it looks. With safety and infotainment now up to scratch, a few more reasons not to buy a model of this kind have been removed. Plus, thanks to Blue HDI technology, no other rival in this segment can better this model when it comes to offering an efficient set of running costs. And whether it makes more sense than its very similar Vauxhall and Citroën design stablemates is a key question, of course. But if you've a friendly local Peugeot dealer and the price is right, it could all be enough to seal the deal for what still remains one of the most versatile vehicles that sensible money will buy.